Had Jefferson Thomas claimed all Englishmen were created equal, we might be somewhere. Had he said that in England, that would have meant something. At the time of his famous phrase, Englishmen were definitely not thought equal by other Englishmen. And we think that was fine. We fill classes in theatre to experience Shakespeare. For most of the famous self-congratulating history of the Western world, with its literature, its famous plays and music, art and science, the condition of most of its citizens, they weren't even citizens, its people, was abject. It is our tradition. Perhaps some of us imagine we are free of this nasty creed of inequality. It's very unlikely. Jefferson would have said, likely, that John Bull said the same thing 400 years earlier. And Wat Tyler was murdered trying to conclude a revolution based on equality, which the powers that be were having none of. My question is, are we free of this delusion today? This superior delusion, perhaps in advertising, but definitely not in the mind, which is where it counts, like racism or sexism. We are addicted to, obsessed with, and love our elitism. It is our Ivy League. It is the ism that is encouraged, and its opposite, populism, much more real and less repugnant, is the great heresy. Elitism and its various proofs are our creed. We still believe in the republic, and it's a republic where the qualified, the aristocracy, rule for the people. If you're not over that one, you're not moving. Our issue, in an Armenian nutshell, is that the groovy notion of created equal, a state into which we can safely agree we are born, precedes a life in a rat race motivated by proving how much better one is than the other guy or gal. Pretty quickly, school becomes a competition. The rest follows. Our sense of self we base on where we are in the race. The race is fine, invigorating, but there are other much better ways of defining oneself. Other cultures have practiced these other ways, and we destroyed them. Perhaps because they had that very knowledge. We didn't want it out there. We definitely need a large number of men to confuse the size of their car with the size of or our economy and culture and values disappear. This is the hangover of several hundreds of years, maybe thousands of humans steeped in the beliefs that John and Watt were butchered for challenging. The hangover appears to be permanent. The drinking from the cup has gone unabated. The drunk keeps falling down onto the same pavement, breaking the same legs over and over, getting up and staggering and blundering on unhealed. And the drunk is leading. He's the president. That we are still wrapped up, obsessed, drunk with notions of relative value, status, reputation, and specialness is sad. But without this competition and its mythic medallions, we don't know who we are. One day in the 18th century, a Frenchman wrote about the disgraceful laziness of the English peasant. When we read Jane Austen or Shakespeare, we are sustaining a lot of assumptions about who and who isn't a person. As a young man of means, I'd have been let loose upon the community of people just like me. I would have been judged Darcy-like as this or that, a scoundrel or a good fellow, while my shoes were shined and my hat brushed by a non-person, an animal. It's no shot at Jane and her gorgeous prose and her wonderful insights. I fucking love them. But something huge is being blocked out of my Darcy consciousness. She writes of a world, well, a real one, that she and hers live in at a price we readers ignore. And I'm mostly not bringing up the oppression of the hidden class, but as much about the severe, nasty limitations of the Darcy one, his closed or at least massively limited psyche. And like the citizens of Rome living in mortal fear of their slaves, we create justifications for our inhumanity by thinking we are more human. Spartacus erupts like Hamas and Rome reacts like the IDF. The toxic psychic brew of Rome, the Jim Crow South, apartheid South Africa explodes in rage. They do not ask why Hamas did what they did because they know why. like Longshanks knew, like the plantation owner knew. And when the Longfield attack happens, their single foe, shocked response, they are animals. And they are lucky to be oppressed by us, as the white girl shouted at the Mike Brown protesters. We gave you your freedom. We read a Tolstoy and think what? That we who can read our Vronsky, every now and then a gypsy walks across the Austen or Tolstoy pastoral canvas, the captain in War and Peace who wins the battle but gets no credit. Whoosh, gone, back to the aristocrats. I think that this cultural predilection answers some really deep need, a sense of smallness and worthlessness that we invent solutions for, to feel big and worthy and to take the next step. The rights of tribes? But Darcy might assert he is part of the greatest civilization ever. We do. One that has transcended a tribe. We lie. We will claim we are above them, except they cannot be so easily got rid of. The rights, the tribalisms, the tribe composed of the modern individual, the uncollective me American model, will be an aggressive, sheepish, sneaky tribe. It will look like what it has become, a religion whose adherent will say, when his tribe is attacked by people he has oppressed for generations, will say what he has felt all along, has felt justified his oppressions, that they are animals. This is his worldview. He has no option. I and we are better than you, and I have created a dogma, a religion that tells that story, and that is my identity. And none of us can survive without an identity, false or true. In case you are itching to call me anti-something, the other side is no different. Edward I said the Highlanders were animals. Pope Pius called the Arabs animals. George Washington called the Shawnee and the Miami peoples animals. Osama bin Laden called etc., etc. You get the picture. At heart, the IDF is ISIS, which is Hamas, which is the U.S. Air Force. The tiny differences are material. The bigger the bomb, the more its dropper can convince himself he's not a murderer. The greatest coward to date in history invented the drone. The second biggest flew over Hiroshima. The last gasp on this is the shocking consensus of the Western supremacist nations in support of Israel. Well, of course, it is their cause, exactly. But I am shocked at the stupid shallowness. All the drivel just flies out the window. As with the BLM protests and the insurrection, they clamor. They are animals. I hope there are monotheists who don't feel this superiority. I've known many and slept with not a few who are delightful, good people. But under duress, pop, there it is. The justification of evil deeds is always goodness. If I was a predictor and not a gambler, I would be grateful these Western powers have exposed themselves this way, that South Africa and Namibia are challenging them, and it is them they are challenging, not Israel. It's not Israel. And the rebuttal has already been typically paternal. You have no idea. Leave this to the adults, the West, the committers of genocide, who would decide the merit of South Africa's proposition, are at it again, just like all the other ones. A brave Biden would say, of course it's genocide, but it's a good one. We are doing it, so it must be good. It is the argument of the West. It was the Nazi argument. There are pockets of dissent. Ireland, Celtic Football Club in Glasgow, has a pro-Palestinian fan club. There is hope in the real world. So I am optimistic.